So many of you know I'm a big baseball fan, and I love this author. We call this authors that we love. I truly love this guy. His love of baseball is so powerful in it. Honestly, everything that he writes about baseball is done with so much love. It's not done with cynicism or skepticism, but absolute love of the game, but a lot of wisdom. And so he has a brand new book called Why We Love Baseball. And so I am delighted to be interviewing someone who's a hero of mine, honestly. Welcome, Joe Posnanski, to the Global Peace Tribe and to our Awakening World show.
That's amazing. Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit just about how did you fall in love with baseball? What's it meant to you?
Oh, it's meant so much to me. I mean, and I think for me, it starts the way I think it does for most people. It starts with my father. Uh, I am a first generation American, and my father came to this country just a couple of years before I was born, and sort of came with the knowledge that if he was going to raise an American son, he was going to teach him baseball. So he learned baseball mainly, I think, to teach me, and of course, fell in love with the game himself. And it's been a part of my life. We used to have those old home movies, which eventually we lost in a flood or something. But the very earliest home movies we had was of me swinging a little wiffle ball bat at a baseball. It goes back for me as far back as I can remember. My earliest memories, so many of them, are revolve around playing baseball. We didn't have much, but we would usually go to one doubleheader a year. I grew up in Cleveland, and those games stand out in my mind so much. And I just continued to love the game, and I think loved it, probably the same way you did, which is, at different ages you love something different about the game. When I was very young, it was just about the excitement of it, and the smell of popcorn and cotton candy and all of those things. And then you get older, and I started loving playing the game. I loved box scores and keeping up with the game, baseball cards. And so I think it just kind of continued to grow as I grew older.
I totally relate. My dad was born and raised in Brooklyn, was a big Brooklyn Dodger fan. He then moved to LA, and 2 years later, the Dodgers moved to LA.
Wow.
And so I was weaned on Koufax, Drysdale, Maury Wills. And the very first year I was old enough to really follow baseball, it was 63 when we swept the Yankees.
Wow.
So I was just hooked. I'll send you a photo that I also have, one of my early photos where I've got this gigantic bat. I'm this little kid holding this gigantic bat. So I can relate.
Love
Now,
it.
I love the theme of as we mature, how we relate to the game changes. And I remember I was just a Dodger diehard fan. I'd listened to Vin Scully, and if the Dodgers won, oh, I was happy. And if they lost, I was depressed until they won again. But as I got older, my dad helped me to understand that be a Dodger fan, but also be a baseball fan
Yeah.
and appreciate even when somebody on the other team appreciate Pete Rose, appreciate those guys. Don't just hate them, but appreciate them. You can still
Yeah.
want your team to win, but appreciate the other great talents. And that was part of my maturing.
I think that baseball is a sport that allows you to do that maybe a little bit more than, say, football,
Mhm.
where it's very, very, very difficult not to view it as sort of us against them. Our guys are the heroes, those guys are the enemies. It's a very violent and emotional game along those lines, and draws from that power. Uh, Baseball is a little bit different, and I think I'm astonished how many people say I love Henry Aaron, and they were not Braves fans. They were Yankee fans or Red Sox fans, but how could you not appreciate somebody of that caliber, not just as a player, but as a person, and everything he represented? How could you not appreciate saying to people, I saw Willie Mays play,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so, the Dodgers and Giants, as you know better than anybody, have long had a very heated rivalry. And yet I I know many, many, many Dodgers fans who will tell you that the greatest things they ever saw, Sandy Koufax pitch and Willie Mays play center field. And I mean, I think that's so much at the heart of the game. I think right now, for example, everybody loves Shohei Ohtani. You don't have to be an
Yeah,
Angels fan to love
absolutely.
Shohei Ohtani, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I have still snapshots that I took with a camera of Willie Mays and Willie McCovey at a Dodger Giants game. And I've got Willie looking at me, and oh my God, there's just like the most amazing thing. And I
Yeah,
love that he's still alive. God bless him.
it's
God
amazing.
bless
It's
him. Yeah.
so wonderful, and of course he's very much a part of this book. Though, so this really relates. Not to get to the book too early, but this so relates because what I knew was I wanted to write about exactly what we're talking about, which is why we love this game. And what I did was I asked people, players, managers, but just friends, people on the street, people I met, why do you love this game? And it's stories exactly like what you're telling.
Yeah.
It's not so much, oh, I love the game because I love triples or I love, some specific element to the game. It's my dad taught me how to play the game. My mom played catch with me in the front yard. I remember the first time I walked and saw the green grass of the field. It's very personal, and I love that. And that's I wanted, like, hey, can I capture that in a book? Can I capture those personal feelings about why we love this game? And it's exactly as we're talking about it.
I had an experience with Steve Garvey. I met him after he had retired. And so, of course, I went up and I did oh God, Garv, I love you, and da da da. And he looked at me and he smiled and he said, we had fun, didn't we?
Yeah.
And Joe, it was so inclusive. It was exactly what you're talking about. It's like Garv got it. It's like, we all shared those moments together.
It's so true. It's so true. And to me, it is moments. I mean, that is what this book is, a countdown and a look at moments, baseball moments. And I think beyond what the moments are in the book, I think that's exactly it. It's we share a moment. So if you go to a football game and you see an incredible performance by somebody on the other team, you go home angry, right? You go home like I personally will never forgive John Elway what he did to my teams, right? But in baseball, you go to a game and you see somebody throw a no hitter, or you see somebody hit 3 home runs, or steal 4 bases, or go 5 for 5. You go home and you go, wow, I'm so happy I saw that. I'm so happy we shared that. Even if you're mad that your team lost, it's
Yeah.
still, look what we shared. Look what you're a part of it. You're like a part of it. And so I think that's kind of specific to baseball. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. I just went through that with Ronald Acuna. I'm like, so, and he just clobbered the Dodgers these last few days. I was like, oh God, all right, this guy really, maybe he really does deserve the MVP, even though, of course, I want Mookie to win it.
Of course. Of course. But
So
that's
that,
right. How
so
could you not say that? To me, and Mookie is my all-time favorite, like
yeah.
of players today. Not just because of what a player he was, but what a delight, right? Just
Oh,
everything about him shines
great human
joy,
being,
and oh.
great human being.
But how can you watch Ronald Acuna play baseball and not feel this thrill? I mean, we've never seen anything like this with
We've
a guy
never seen
who
that
steals
before.
60 bases and hits 30 home runs. It's never happened. It's never
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
And so I do think that's right. And I think that was exactly what I heard from Dodger fans was, yeah, this Acuna, can't stand him, Mookie for MVP. But yeah, he's pretty good, isn't he? He's
He's
pretty
pretty
good.
good. It's quite a race. Okay, so continuing on the journey of how we've matured in our love of baseball. When I was a kid, we played Stratomatic and we played, all-time all-star baseball with the dice. And then we got computers and we got, our baseball league. And my best friend Richard, who will delight in watching this, he knows I'm doing the interview today. We created our first computer baseball league. And he
Sure.
said, man, we got to add the Negroes. We got to add those guys. So we did our own research and we figured out we created a Negro all-star team. And I got to tell you, they kicked butt. They won with the best team in our league, of course, because, it was this incredible team. Though our Dodgers did pretty well too. We kind of,
Of course.
but it gave us a chance to start researching and learning about all these guys. And you've played a big role in my greater understanding because of what you've written about and a lot of the research you did about a lot of the guys that I didn't even know before or didn't know enough about. So please tell me about how you matured into love of the Negro Leagues and your wonderful relationship with Buck O'Neil.
Yeah, I mean, it really does very much go back to Buck O'Neil. I had a moderate interest in the Negro Leagues, as I think many baseball fans do, but it was more or less limited to Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson. I think even very casual baseball fans were aware of how great they were. Maybe they've heard of Cool Papa Bell, of course, for the famous stories about him being so fast he could turn out the lights and be under the cover before the room got dark and so on. But it was pretty limited. And I met Buck O'Neil in 1992 at the All-Star game. He was there with Ken Burns. Ken Burns had just finished the baseball documentary that was on PBS, and Buck, of course, was the star of that documentary. So he brought Buck with him, and I met him, and I said, "What an impressive person! What a great storyteller! You couldn't be around Buck without just loving him." But then I moved to Kansas City, and that's where Buck lived, and I became a sports columnist for the Kansas City Star when Buck was there, and I mean, I can't describe. Buck's a second father to me. I can't even fully describe how much Buck O'Neil meant to me and means to me to this day. I think about him every day. And the thing about Buck, there were a couple of things about Buck. So Buck, to give a quick rundown of his life and career, Buck was not allowed to. He was the grandson of a slave. He was not allowed to go to Sarasota High School. He found his way into the Negro Leagues, where he was a very, very good player. And then he became a manager in the Negro Leagues and a very successful manager. Along the way, he taught and raised players such as Ernie Banks, who was a very quiet, unassuming Texas kid until Buck sort of brought out the love and the let's play two joy that he brought the game. Billy Williams, who quit the game and was going to stay out of baseball until Buck talked him to going back in. And Lou Brock and Lee Smith and Joe Carter. I mean, there's on and on and on the list. As a scout, as a coach, he was the first African American coach in the major leagues. But he spent the bulk of his life as this storyteller, historian of the game, somebody who, at a time when people weren't necessarily willing to listen, he was telling stories about how great these players were and how they shouldn't be forgotten. And it was just being around that was so incredible to me. And of course, at first I told the stories just because they were so wonderful. And after a while, as Buck and I got closer, it became sort of I wanted to carry some of that burden on my shoulder. I mean, Buck had been carrying it for so many years. My friend and brother, Bob Kendrick, who is president of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City, which I hope anybody, if you're ever in or around Kansas City, go. It's incredible place. We sort of felt like, and Buck sort of intimated to us that we needed to sort of carry on. And of course, Bob is black and I am white, but that didn't matter to Buck. Buck for Buck, it was, these are players who should be remembered. This is a league that should be remembered. These are the players who played before Jackie Robinson. He always used to say, we built the bridge that Jackie Robinson and others could walk across. And I when you're around somebody like that without any bitterness, no bitterness in his heart, just someone who nothing but love and faith in humanity. To be around that kind of person, you just soak it in, and I learned, more from Buck than anybody except my own parents. I mean, he was that special to us, and I miss him, but I feel like he's around. I think of him so often, and think about what he would think about anything that happens. I'm like, how would Buck do it? Because Buck was so positive. You could not break him. Like sometimes you would say, look at this guy and what a jerk. And Buck would be like, you have to look at it from his side. And he was just that kind of person. And of course, my first book was The Soul of Baseball, about Buck O'Neill, where I traveled the country with him. And I cannot tell you, that was in basically the last full year of his life that I traveled the country with him. And I can't tell you how blessed I feel. I mean, I knew Buck already by then. We were friends by then. But to be able to travel the country with Buck O'Neill, uh, before we lost him, was something I'll cherish forever.
Joe, what a blessing. That is incredible. That really is
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah. And I believe in karma. So what good karma you had to attract that experience. And that you have, the very fact that you were in Kansas City where the museum is and you met him,
Yes.
these things, the big things in our life, there's a reason for that, you know.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think your love of baseball matched his love of baseball. And I think that's where the two of you really probably bonded, in that mutual love.
I think that's true. He taught me to love baseball even more in his own way. But I always tell this story. People always say, how did you start to write that book, The Soul of Baseball? My very first book. And I tell this story, and it's exactly as I remember it. He called me up one day and said, let's go to lunch. And there used to be this wonderful soul food restaurant called the Peachtree, which was right there on 18th and Vine, which is the very famous jazz and blues corner in Kansas City. And we went to the Peachtree and we were sitting and we were eating, and the food was delicious. It was great. And at the end, Buck started just talking. And he said, everybody thinks the Negro Leagues was this terrible thing, right? Because it was built on racism, built on prejudice, and built on hatred. And he goes, but it wasn't built on those things. It was built on love, the players rising above their moment. And he goes, and we just had so much fun. We just were such that we could play, and we played every day, and we had so much fun. And he said, somebody needs to write that story. Somebody needs to write about the way the Negro Leagues really were. Somebody, and he kept saying somebody. And I was like the only one there, right? So at some point it became clear to me, like, oh, he means me. He wants me to write this book. And that's, in a roundabout way, because I went about it a bunch of different ways. But that's what led to The Soul of Baseball, was Buck basically asking me to tell the story. And he had written his own book, which is wonderful, called I Was Right on Time, which is sort of Buck's old line. People would always say, oh, I bet you wish you were born later. And he goes, no, I was right on time, because if I had played later, I wouldn't have been able to know Louis Armstrong and know Ella Fitzgerald and so on and so on and so on. So for me, it was very much what an honor to have Buck come to me and basically ask me to do this. And the only sadness for me is that we lost him. I literally just finished the book. I was, the last time I saw him, I told him, next time I see you, I'll bring the book and I'll read it to you. And he was gone 2 weeks later. But I kind of feel like in some ways he knows what's in the book, he knows. And it was very special.
Beautiful. Well, that brings us to now. And tell us about a little bit more about the new book, all about, because that's why you're here.
Yes. Oh yeah. Well, so it's called Why We Love Baseball, like we've talked about. It is a countdown of the 50 moments. It's called A History in 50 Moments. It's a countdown of the 50 most sort of magical moments in baseball history. Um, it is, it was so much fun to write. It was just so much of a joy because I just could pick moments and write about them. And there are many more than 50 moments in here, by the way. There are actually more than 100 moments that I squeezed in. It's people always ask me like, "Oh, how did you get it down to 50 moments?" I'm like, the best way to get something down to 50 moments is to actually do 108 moments and then tell people it's 50. Um, but incredible. And there's actually a chapter in this book not only dedicated to Buck, because I kind of view the whole book being dedicated to Buck. He's in my dedication. Um, but there's a chapter I actually gave to Buck that I let Buck tell the story from the Negro Leagues, featuring Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige. That I do it entirely in Buck O'Neill's words. I just let Buck tell the tale, and really special. I actually read. It was very funny. I read I narrated the audiobook. This is the first time I've ever done that. I've never narrated one of my audiobooks before. And I came to that chapter, and suddenly there I was trying to read Buck O'Neill's words, and it was moving, but it was also, I don't have Buck's voice or Buck's wonderful, the way he told stories, just everything about his. I mean, he was like a musician, the way he would
Mhm.
tell stories, and he would always just throw in a little yeah, in the middle, and it would just be perfect and beautiful. And I was like, oh, should I throw in a yeah? And I'm like, no, don't even. You're not going to be able to impersonate Buck O'Neill. But yeah, I mean, it's really, really special to me. But I mean, you have great moments in here that people will know, legendary moments. You'll certainly recognize Sandy Koufax's perfect game, and
Yeah.
Willie Mays' catch, and Kirk Gibson's home run, and Henry Aaron's home run, and Reggie Jackson's 3 home runs, and so on and so on and so on. But there are a lot of moments in here that no matter how big a baseball fan you are, I'm willing to wager you don't know either anything about it or very little about it. These are finds, little fun stories that are I think really special. So I think I think it's a very fun read because you'll go from familiar to unfamiliar, all of it sort of leading to this question:
I
why we
I
love
cannot
baseball.
wait. I cannot wait.
Yeah.
So I got to ask, Pee Wee Reese putting his arm around Jackie.
Chapter, I can tell you that's I don't they're numbered. I actually ranked them, and I don't know, like, if somebody said, "Oh, what number is Reggie Jackson's 3 home runs?" I don't know, but I know that one. I know that one is chapter 42. I know that one is chapter 42.
Well,
It's
how
called
perfect, because that was Jackie's number.
That was Jackie's number. So it's called The Embrace, and it really dives into the whole story and how it happened. Did it happen? What is the sort of takeaway, and what does it mean? And it was one of my favorite chapters, being honest.
Oh, beautiful. I've got tears. I'm so glad that you got that. Just as an aside, did you ever hear Vince Scully's story about ice skating with Jackie? Do you know that story?
No, no.
I'll find the audio and send it to you. So it's early on, and Vin's like a cub, he's just kind of starting with the Dodgers, and
Sure.
both he and Jackie are kind of new to the team, and they're up in the Poconos, and they're doing some promotional event. And Vinny was quite a skater because, where he grew up, he was a skater.
Right.
And so he said, well, can I come skating with you? And Rachel is with them, and she's 8 months pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
Jackie has never put skates on in his life. Vince says, okay, sure. And Jackie says, okay, I'll race you. And Vince says, well, Jackie, I'm not the athlete you are, but you've never put on skates before. Jackie said, that's okay. I want to race you. That's how I'll learn. And Vince says that that's the story that captured the spirit of Jackie Robinson.
Yeah.
Even though he had never skated before, he's like, not only take me skating, but I'm going to race you the moment we get out on the ice.
I love it. I love it. Jackie Robinson, of course, I mean, he's very, very prominent in this book in many stories. But the thing I think about with Jackie Robinson is he literally could not fail, right? He had the weight of the world on his shoulders, but if he had failed, there's no telling how history would have gone. And he knew that. And you know this probably as a Jackie Robinson fan. Baseball was his worst sport in the college.
Yeah.
His worst sport. He was a fantastic
Track,
track
football,
and football and basketball. He was he was
basketball.
he was the best player on the West Coast in basketball. He was an All-American in football, and he was good enough at track that he probably could have gone to the Olympics. And baseball was by far his fourth sport, and maybe worse because he was also a great tennis player. He was just one of those athletes. But it didn't matter because he could not fail. And the will of Jackie Robinson wouldn't allow it. And of course, he ends up becoming not only this pioneer of the game, but one of the greatest players to ever play the game.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I cannot wait to read your, just like I look forward to your 100, the baseball 100.
Yeah.
And of course, we're all, okay, who's number one? Is going to be Willie, is going to be Babe Ruth. Um, if Shohei were able, if he didn't have the arm injury, if he were able to continue to pitch and hit, let's say for another 5 years, where do you think he would have landed on your baseball 100?
Well, I'm still hopeful that he's going to be able to come back and pitch. Obviously, the elbow injury again is devastating, but his will is incredible. I mean, he's only doing this because he insisted. Nobody really wanted him to do both things. I'd say already he's done things that nobody else has ever done.
Yeah,
And I don't know how long he has to be doing this at this level to be the best player who ever lived. But I would say the last 2 years have been as good as any seasons that we've ever seen. I mean,
yeah,
it's not possible to be better. 3 years, wherever the MVP year last year and this year.
this year.
It's not possible to be better. I mean, it's like you can't be one of the best pitchers and one of the best hitters in the game at the same time. It's just never happened. So he's like his own category. I've said this before, and I really believe this to be true. I think they should do away. They should give out the Shohei Ohtani Award every year, and he wins it every year, and give the MVP to like the best like human player, right? Like the best mortal. The best mortal gets the MVP, and Shohei Ohtani gets his own award every year.
Yeah, I love that idea. I love that idea. Uh, all right. Well, I'm going to go to back to your website one more time. I'm loving this conversation. Thank you so much.
Oh, of
Um,
course.
so, hey, everybody, it's his name. It's really easy to go to the website. For those of you who are watching on 200 different Facebook groups and pages, Joe, it's his name, joeposnanski.com. Joe, POSNANSKI.com. And you are sports writing's biggest star. Absolutely. Um, I subscribe to his Joe blogs, which again, every day when it comes into my email, it's like, yes, another Joe blogs has come in. A little more excited when it's baseball than maybe one of the other sports.
Sure.
But we can all pre-order this book here. So here's the pre-order page, but I'm going to continue to scroll down. And he's going on tour. And this is his first week, but by the time I show this, it'll be after that. And I will have actually met you by the time this is done.
That's
So I'll
right.
show hopefully a photo because I'll be with you in San Francisco. But here's where everybody can sign up right now for his books or his newsletter, I should say. So I'm going to do that right now, although I'm already on his list, of course. But let's all go there right now, subscribe, and at least be on his list. And then this is where you can choose your subscription plan. You guys, if you love sports or if you want to learn how to love sports, Joe is the man. He is just the most wonderful writer when it comes to sports. Because, Joe, our show is all about the awakening world. And we believe that as hard as things are on the planet, and it's hard, and we do shows about climate change, we do shows about social injustice. We're not with our heads in the sand, but we do believe that there is hope, there is an awakening happening. And it's because of people like yourself who do everything with love. That's the theme of our show, is do everything with love. And that's you. So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you so much. And keep it up. I look forward to meeting you in about 2 weeks in San Francisco. And hopefully we're going to sell a lot of your books. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, my pleasure. I could talk to you forever, but I will let you go. I know you're in New York and it's 9:35 there. So thank you again, Joe. God bless you.
Thank you.